Hi. I'm a little nervous, but hi everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here today. And for those of you who don't know, my name's Chloe Park. I'm at Chloe Park on the internet, pretty much everywhere, like Instagram, Twitter. And like Drew was saying, I'm a tractor designer. Oops, sorry. I'm actually an experience designer at OpenTable, and we're located in San Francisco. But to give you a little bit more background information about myself, I actually come from print design, and I studied visual communications in the East Coast, and I joined OpenTable after I graduated, and I was designing magazines there for 1.5 years. During this time, I actually visited San Francisco and connected with a friend of a friend who suggested the idea of maybe transitioning into tech, something a little bit more viable. And so I moved out to San Francisco after some contemplation and joined him in a 2-person design studio called Curio. I was there for close to 1 year, consulting with various startups, and then a little over 1 year ago, I joined OpenTable. So just out of curiosity, how many of you guys have heard of OpenTable? Oh, wow, okay. How many of you guys used it? Have used it? Oh, wow, pretty similar number there, awesome. Well, for those of you who aren't familiar with OpenTable, it's the world's largest real-time restaurant reservation service. That's a mouthful, but we basically help you make a reservation without calling, and we help restaurants manage their business when you arrive at the restaurant. And for those of you who are going to immediately Google it, don't bother. Here's the website. And I know what you're thinking. You're probably like, why did I join this company? But before I get to that, I'll start with a little story. So we all know that the lion is the king of the jungle. Every creature that graces the jungle floor must surrender to the power of the lion. Yet, while the lion rules the jungle, he has his detractors. Every day, the lion wakes up to defend his right to rule. As he grows older, animals increasingly challenge this title. Even the young lion cubs attempt to overthrow him. And as he grows older, his mane begins to tatter and his teeth fall out. And in spite of this, the one thing he's able to hold on to is his ability to roar. So as the gazelle come near their prey, he roars, and they retreat. Little do they know, the younger, stronger lions are actually waiting for them on the other side. And this is kind of maybe what's going to happen. I didn't actually get the bloody shot, but so in fact, if the herd had gone against their instinct and ran towards the roar, they would have been saved and maybe even thrived. So I want to share this story because not only is it a story about facing your fears, it's about going against the normal, expected, instinctual place. And when I chose to join OpenTable in May of last year, it was very much me running towards the roar. And since joining, I've continued to make really difficult decisions as a designer. And so appropriately, the title of my talk today is Run Towards the Roar. And not to mention, I was running against the roar with this talk because I don't recommend hand-making your slides like I did, especially for a 45-minute talk. I think I have like 140 slides, but we'll get through it. So anyways, back to OpenTable. Like I said, joining wasn't an easy decision. When I first got contacted by OpenTable, my first reaction was like, interesting. And then upon visiting the site, that quickly changed to like a hell no, not happening. It took a second email and a really pleasant coffee meeting for me to be convinced to interview. I was told I would be a founding member of a brand new in-house design team commissioned with redesigning all of our products. And it was, intriguing. And, oh, by the way, this is the landing page. And I remember saying that this site looked like a park domain page during my interview. And like, they were like, what would you change? And I'm like, where do I start? So, the idea seemed cool enough, but I couldn't help but wonder what I was getting myself into. Were things really going to change? And I asked this to myself knowing it's way easier to want to change than to actually change. And we're talking about a public company that basically had 14 years of design debt. So I asked during my interview, how green is the light really? Were things really going to change? And I was actually in the process of interviewing a bunch of other companies, and many of them were praised for their design, and I even had a few offers. And ultimately, I was like kind of narrowing things down. It came down to OpenTable and another place. And most of my design community was like, thought I was crazy for considering OpenTable, and even crazier to choose that even crazier that I chose it over the other company. But I did, and I ran towards the reward. And not all hope was lost. At least we had moved to a cooler office. This was, I think, one of my first day there, and they had gone from like really standard corporate, like depressing cubicle place to like something a little better in San Francisco. So we had some pretty cool digs. And I joined as number 4 of a brand new team, and OpenTable had never had in-house designers, like I said before, and I'm happy to share that a lot has happened since then. Fast forward 1 year, and we're already at 17, and this was my surprise birthday party when we were pretty early on, 2 months into my gig. You can see Greg, who's also here. And you know, this is us at 17. We built an awesome team. And this is our Ellen Oscar selfie-inspired team selfie. But yeah, so 1 year, a lot has happened. And today, I'm going to talk about 3 projects I've been working on. And hopefully, you'll kind of see a theme. First project is called Let's Go to Work. And I mainly call it this because I felt like we were unprepared and we went to battle. It all really started 3 months into my gig. I was kind of like, la-di-la-di-la, this is cool. And then a certain fruit company that a lot of us love called. And they were like, hey, we want to actually like feature you in our iOS 7 launch app store. And it was like, yay, you know, like it's Apple, right? So we went to Cupertino. Here, this is my like trying to be sneaky badge shot. And we met with the big guys. It was really exciting. And then we found out that we would have to make it through a selection process. And it wasn't even like we were guaranteed the spot. And there were like dozens of other apps, like big name people. Oh, and that we might have up to 4 weeks. And even our contact, our developer contact, wasn't given details on a release date for the GM of iOS 7. So it was supposed to launch when the GM was out, the Gold Master, and they didn't really have any information about what they can give us date-wise. And so it was kind of like, oh, you might have 4 weeks, but you might have 6, but you might have 5, and it was like this ambiguous thing. So it was like, okay, not so yay. It was just yay. And I know it seems like a long time ago. I can't even, when I look at this, I cringe a little. But let me take you back to the pre-iOS 7 days, to Pietro's comment yesterday about how flat design came and like destroyed everything. It's pretty much that. It was like new, flat, bright, and really quite terrifying, actually. So sad face. This was our existing app in the iOS 7 beta. I mean, do I really need to say more? It's not the best experience. So sad face again. And like my title was suggesting, it felt like we were being drafted to war, like without training, without warning. It was just like, oh, Apple called, we're summoned, we're going to get into this fight, we're going to like try to get this done, but we have no battle plan. Like I literally just like found out, came the next day, and it was it. So, yeah. And our challenge was to redesign an app with much design debt and design it for iOS 7, and there was no precedent or app market to follow or reference. It was like literally brand new. Like we only had the Apple system apps to reference, and you know, like again, the time constraints. And so this is us in our room. We were locked up. It actually ended up being for around 6 weeks. It was kind of like dragged on and on and on. And that's 7 of us, 3 developers, 2.5 designers. We had a contractor, 1 QA person, and a product manager. And this fisheye is generous in the spacing, I would say. It was really small. And like, no offense to developers, but you know, if you're cramped up in that space all the time with them, and like, you know, there's VO and like all this stuff happening. Anyway, so it would end up becoming a period of like really little sleep, like way too much takeout. We were probably Postmates like #1 like client at the time or customer, and I basically had no life. It was like literally like 100-hour weeks. It'd be like 4 a.m. still like cranking away, and this was a giant whiteboard calendar we had up in our room to keep track of like everything we'd be taking care of development and design-wise, and this was our first week kicking into the project. And here are some process shots of wireframes, and I tried a lot of things visually aside from what you see in the existing app. And basically, it was like a time that I was filled, and I think the other my design director was filled with so much desire and to produce something amazing. It was going to be the first product that we were shipping from the in-house design team, and like we felt like we had so much to prove. It's like we wanted to show the before design team and the post design team, and to be dramatic. So given the time constraints, we had to make a lot of compromises. For example, we wanted to make an awesome booking experience, an interaction of some sort that would celebrate the moment of successfully making a reservation, whereas instead of just being like, done, your reservation is done, whatever, it kind of we wanted it to be like, hey, this is exciting, you're gonna go out to eat. And so, I think this is really fast, but you can see like we tried some rapid prototyping to see what kind of things we could do. But we had a lot of time constraints, and this is a crappy GIF of what we actually ended up with. It's a little, let me play it again. It's a little bounce, and it really seems simple, but at the time we really had to fight hard to get this interaction built. Developers who had never worked with, we had never worked with, didn't really see the value of spending the extra time to work on something that seemed like a frivolous interaction. But I really believe that it's moments like this that help them make the product a good experience. It's all the little details. So here's our calendar as we filled out the weeks, and we kind of have this D-Day marked at the bottom, but it was like a tentative D-Day. But here's our last night celebrating with champagne, and of course I'm wearing like an Apple hat, being a total fangirl. And here it is, all in its glory. It wasn't an easy time, and I can safely say the whole team refers to it as like our dark days. But it's hard to imagine how else a redesign could have happened so quickly. It was Apple's call that was an opportunistic catalyst to launching our redesign, not just for iOS 7, but really for us, OpenTable. And here's another crappy GIF of kind of the way it flowed. And it's actually changed, and we've iterated upon it since shipping this last September, but it was such a huge step up from what we had, even in its shaky like remnants. You could see the menu, and there was like a structure to the app. And yeah, so like I said, it was a dramatic change. This app icon represents so much more than just flat and not. There was also some rebranding work that was happening like simultaneously while I was in there. Like I picked a new red and these color palettes that now is kind of dictating a lot of our stuff. And I had no idea it would. And ultimately, Apple featured us. Here we are. They featured us in a lot of places. And we even got to eat our own app icon. So I actually kind of didn't talk about this, but we were also redesigning food spotting, which OpenTable had acquired right before I joined. And so actually we're doing 2 apps in 6 weeks, which is a lot of work. But here they're on a cake. It was a giant red velvet cake and delicious. So in many ways, this project was far from the ideal. It was short, pressure-filled, deadline-driven, and we were completely isolated. The design process was severely diluted, and we were designing based off our own intuitions, which is a little bit of a faux pas in product design world. But in spite of all these shortcomings, it was an important product because it served as a statement that caused an awakening, not a transformation, but a small seed was planted for the first time, possibly ever. The world, and more importantly, OpenTable, saw what design could do and what an app, and this app would serve as a North Star for OpenTable. a kind of a standard for what all our future products would be held to. And this is, I think, really important going into my future projects. So the title of my second point is called Unshiny. So a few weeks ago, there was an article on Medium by Jeff Domke, I don't know if I pronounce it right, and I don't know if you can even see it. But he wrote a piece about how designers only like to work on shiny products. And this really stuck to me because it made me realize something. And that is that on the consumer end, our main goal is for a user to be able to make a reservation. In many ways, this makes it the shiny. It's what you tell your friends and family to go download, and the flow is simple enough to allow for some creative freedom. There's room for beautiful, simple interaction moments that we all love. While on the restaurant end, we have many, many more goals and that need to be met by our products. This doesn't even cover all of them, but I think you get the point. It is also our most important product because, as a business, because it's our primary revenue generator. But in these ways, working on a restaurant product is unshiny. It's complex, foreign, and no one you know will know or really care about it. I have a hard time even explaining what it is to people in conversations. And really, it's the ultimate unshiny. I mean, look at it. Meet the herb. It's short for electronic reservation system. It's the big clunky black box in front of most restaurants at the host stand. And this machine houses the software that restaurants pay us to help manage their guests and tables. It helps facilitate simple tasks like seating diners, managing server sections, and more complex business insights like cover counts and some reports to see how they're doing as a business. And if you thought the hardware was ugly, I mean, look at the software. This is it, really. This has been what's been around for 14 years. And here's some of the setup screens shots, beautiful. But I want to remind everyone that the ugly is actually a very important and necessary part of product design. It's kind of the dark before the storm, followed by the dawn. And this was our ugly moment. So prior to the team joining, OpenTable was actually planning to update the herb software and just put it on the iPad. So like new hardware, slightly updated software. And this is what it looked like. A little better. But it's still impressive that restaurants actually know how to use the software, because I don't really, every time I look at this, I'm just like, I don't know even where to start. And people like use it like a pro, which is testament to something else. But as a design team, we came in and we're like, okay, this is not okay. This is our like business revenue product, and we can't ship things that look like this. And so that's really how Guest Center launched. And that's what all this product is just called Guest Center. And here are some really early wireframing shots of what we were dealing with. There's a lot of like interaction flows and tap targets. Here's a possible flow for how to seat a diner, and a diner details card where like information is housed about the diner. And I did a lot of table management sketches, and even an early visual comp, looking a lot better, I think. And here's another iteration. So just by looking at this is not an atypical like whiteboarding session we have, and there's a lot of work that goes into this product. And as a designer, I can safely say it's the most challenging product I've ever worked on. And there's really so many stories, and Levi, who I work with here on it too, is here. But we can tell you so many stories about designing specific features and all the deadlines and constraints that we have to deal with constantly. But I'm going to spare you guys from that because I think we'll go down like a really deep hole. But there is one small story I can share, which hopefully illustrates how intentional we are with our design. This is and it's about a visual exploration we did. Specifically, this one is regarding color, and I don't think the color accuracy is quite there, but we were just pretty much trying to decide, should we go warm and light, or should we go sleek and dark? And it's not really that dark. But we did some really quick and dirty testing, And as we feared, the often dark lit restaurants that we see would most likely experience major face like spotlight moments with a lighter interface compared to a dark one. So that kind of gives you an idea of like all the things we think about in the environment when we design. So as complicated of a product I said it was, there's a lot of constraints. And to list some major ones, there's accessibility. Our app needs to be functional at like an arm's length and have to have really large tap targets because people in the restaurant aren't using the iPad like this we use as a consumer. They're like having it on a stand. People are tapping it from far away. They're trying to have like moments of interaction with the diner and not speak to the screen. So there is like an element that we have to sacrifice of horsiness. You know, we love to all make the small buttons and the small text, but we have to make everything really big. And it has to be viable. There has to be feature parity with the existing herb system, the big clunky thing that you saw. And as clunky as it is, there's a lot of things that it does that we have still yet to kind of bring into the iPad because there's so many features, like the craziest stuff that you would have never thought of that restaurants deal with. And until we have all of that robust, we make the iPad as robust, restaurants, as beautiful as it looks, won't really buy it. And we need to have customization. We want the small mom and pop shop that seats 20 people max to the mega Vegas like buffet restaurants to be able to use our app effectively. And we deal with scalability. While designing, we kind of have been designing feature by feature piecemeal, so we want to make sure we are considering how our system is going to grow and what other additions we'll be making in the near future so that we don't design something and then be like, oh, wait, that's not going to work in our system, and have to redesign it as we add on features. And finally, we have localization. We are actually in 6 different languages, and let me tell you how hard that is. We constantly have to remind ourselves to think about, oops, sorry, lag. We have to constantly remind ourselves to think about string length and how much longer things will be in other languages, like German, for example, lovely language, really, really long. And we have to think about cultural differences, like the use of red in Japan, for example, or the way dates and times are displayed, like 24-hour time, the way dates are year, month, day, you know, all those different formats. So as designers, we often want to have a lot of creative freedom, and we prefer to take on projects with fewer constraints. We want the blank canvas, right? And scream, free me. But this is what happens when you're free of constraints. We recreate the herb. This is actually a real shot, by the way. And we don't really want to do this again now, do we? The thing is, I'm learning that we really are designed by what you can't control. And we do a lot of research, talking with restaurants, shadowing them, building relationships with them to figure out what their needs are, and we bake all of that gathered knowledge into our product. And this is what we built with constraints. Here's a final look at our floor plan. We have a smart seating mode that spotlights where and helps the host decide where to seat someone. It's also in Japanese, so you can get kind of idea of the languages. And it uses smart algorithms to help them. And here's a look at our guest details in German, where we house their reservation information, and you can change their party size, turn times, and their statuses, and we can put in tags like birthday, anniversary, or allergies, and preferences like booth requested, things like that. And I just actually made this really quick recording of kind of how the app feels. We focus on really making it feel responsive and snappy, the complete antithesis of what the herb felt like, slow and clunky. We really wanted each thing to feel like it was responding immediately to your touch. And you can add tags. And you can really easily seat someone. Just, again, spotlight effect, seat now. And you can see that they're seated. And go into there and type in allergies, like avocado allergies. yeah, so, and here's a photo showing the herb. That's it right there, next to Guest Center on the iPad. The keyboard is optional, but look at that size difference, not to mention the functionality difference. So really, what I realized is that these constraints that we talk about, or I've talked about, are really creative constraints, because they're the source of creativity. And it's this that produces my most powerful work, and making it my best work. Let me recap that for you. Creative constraints equals the most powerful work and equals my best work. So my takeaway from this project, which I'm still working on, by the way, and pulling my hair out all the time about, is that constraints, even when they can feel stifling, don't have to all be bad. In fact, constraints can be the source of creativity behind great work that empowers people to do their jobs better. In our case, we empower servers and hosts to serve better, and as a result, we hope to see that trickle down to the experience our diners have. So it's a big ecosystem. And my third and final project is titled The Mystery. This is because the product is still in its early stages and is an unfinished story. So I've talked about the complexities of restaurant product, but now I want to transition to talking about another level of complexity that goes beyond the screen. I'm talking about payments, a service that would let you pay for your check with your phone. It all started with the acquisition of a payments company last year, and suddenly we were faced with a working build without any design team time that was set to enter beta, but the experience was not great. So I found myself in that design room again, the iOS 7 one, and backtracking months of work to get back to the core, people. And it was under major time pressure with an ask of beta launch in 6 weeks. We knew our main goal was to take an experience that was technically, working and make it something that could really thrive in the real world. So we got straight to work. As our first link between restaurant and consumer, there was a lot of work to do and findings to uncover in a short period of time. We wanted to find out how a mobile payment option could fit in within the lives of OpenTable users, including diners and restaurant staff. There's a great quote by Charles Eames that says, recognizing the need is the primary condition for design. So despite the short time, we set out to find this need and do some lightweight research. We talked to restaurants to find out what their expectations and thoughts were. And we even went to Japan. This was not during the 6-week time, but we went. And to talk to restaurants. Here's a really small, max 13 seat or 13 cover restaurant. And we talked to natives there and did dine-alongs with them to find out how they think about payments and dining. Here we are synthesizing all that information. We kind of love Post-it notes at OpenTable. And beyond that, we did all sorts of diagramming and mapping to figure out all the touch points across multiple users. It was our way of dissecting the dining experience from planning to the end of meal to figure out where we could best inject ourselves. Here's some more lovely Post-it art. And this is kind of the stages I talked about, planning and when you're arriving and you're actually dining, and then the end of the meal. And I really liked this map setup that we figured out, which had a swim lane, if you will, for each actor. We had the restaurant, OpenTable, and the diner, and kind of seeing where similarities mapped along the flow. The thing is, we're constantly asking ourselves, just because you have the technology doesn't mean that it should live in the world. During this project, I was learning quickly that the existing behaviors for diners and restaurants in regards to payments was really strongly ingrained. And we all know that change is hard, and changing people's habits or behavior is even harder. I think there's a delicate balance between designing something radically different and designing something stale. And where you live, there's no real formula for figuring that out and how well it will actually do in this world. And coupled with this is a strong correlation between effort and reward. If we don't provide enough reward for using our service compared to the effort it takes to set it up, it simply wouldn't be worth it for the user, right? So here we mapped out a simple dining flow, and we kind of were overlaying potential injection points of like, diner arrives, diner checks in, you know, all these moments that we could potentially see ourselves. And kind of, this is showing the up and down emotional curves of the diner, like when they're happy, like made a reservation, yay, have to pay for my bill, nay, you know, kind of thing. And so kind of seeing where we introduce more pain points and where we can actually improve the dining experience with our technology. And here, some early wireframes again. Love those Copic markers. And we had a flow diagram, and we had visuals. And here is the FRE that shipped, the first run experience. And basically, after you reserve through OpenTable, if it's a payments-enabled restaurant, you are given the option to set up payment. And when you arrive at the restaurant for your reservation and order something, your check is matched to your table. With this data, we are able to show you your check and your current order if you wish to see it, and pay at any point of the meal. You just slide, and it's your way of saying, yes, I approve this bill. And if you, let's say you pay right after ordering appetizers, you can actually continue to order, assuming that the final amount will be charged at the end of the meal. Kind of like when you check in at a hotel and you consent to additional charges. And so this really, you know, has a lot of benefits of giving you freedom, like for people who are catching a show, who are waiting forever for the waiter or waitress to bring their check back and do the back and forth of like, put my card down, go get it, come back and sign it, then tip it and all that stuff. It's all taken care of. Tip is also taken care of in this thing. So people like to call it like the Uber of payments. And here's a shot of it in the wild. I got the opportunity to dine out a lot while I tested it. And so the thing about this project that is so mysterious and fascinating for me as a designer is recognizing sometimes that being a product designer isn't always about the product, actually. And that this design problem was very much about building around people and their off-screen moments of dining. And this was running towards the roar in the sense that I surprisingly spent a very small amount of time, proportionately, of the project on the actual screen designs. It was all about figuring out the flow and crafting that experience that made the offline moments so great so that the diners could stay off screen. So I've showed you guys a glimpse of my past year at OpenTable. What is the major takeaway? The takeaway is that I ran towards the roar, and in return I had impact, learning, and growth. When I chose to join OpenTable, I had to overcome a lot of adversities and fight for design in a place that it didn't exist before. It wasn't easy, for sure, but hopefully I've illustrated to you guys the kind of impact and influence you can have when you go in and you're shaping an experience in a design desert. And the impact spreads. Forbes, in April of this year, Forbes actually published an article series, and the title of it was saying that OpenTable is moving from transactional to experiential. And to give you a little recap, transactional is where most traditional companies find themselves at. It's the business and often numbers-driven transaction within the company and its employees. Like, we've hired you to do work, and for its customers and their services. We provide you this and you give us this money. Yeah. And experiential involves much deeper, engaged relationships. I think the best example I can give to help you guys see this is, think of buying a computer at Best Buy, good old Comp USA days, you know, some typical electronic store, versus the Apple store. There is like the same thing happening in the sense that you're exchanging money, but the experience is fundamentally different. And I think that's a great way of explaining what experiential is. And the thing is, as generous as Forbes was with that article, I think that OpenTable isn't really at experiential quite yet, you know, not quite yet. But I can say that I think we've managed to nudge the marker over just a little. And you know, I think you have to all remember that it's only been a year since the design team formed, and there's 14 years of building that we are trying to transform. So, impact, check. The next thing is for you. I want to tell you today to give yourself permission to learn from working with creative constraints and to grow. To do the transformational heavy lifting. Really, you will learn so much by going where there's little to no design, and you'll have your hands touch a lot of things. I honestly can't believe the amount I've grown in the past year, and I've only been doing product design or digital design for 2 years. So I ask, what is your roar? Find it and run towards it. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Chloe. Do we have questions right here?
I love your slides. I was hoping you would share them afterwards.
Sure. They're on speaker deck, I think.
Over there.
Sup, Chloe. So I was curious,
Yep.
after you kind of ran into that situation where you wanted to design those interactions and the engineers were fighting you on it, did they see the value afterward? Or did you have to show them the value before? Like, can you talk a little bit more about some tricks that maybe you learned in convincing engineers to go the extra mile for those little things?
You have to drug them. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, you know, I think that for the most part, our developers are great partners. And I think a lot of the company, just as I talked about the 14 years of design debt, are really hungry and thirsty for design. It's like we feel a real shortage of designers because everyone wants a designer. I'm just going to take this off. And the iOS 7 project was like special because we were all like seriously sleep deprived, super hangry, cranky, everything. And so getting any little thing done felt tremendously harder than it actually had to be at the time. And like I said, we had never worked with the developers before. It was like brand new. They had never worked with designers. It was like the PM just like kind of designing things along. And I think we tried to compromise. Like we couldn't get maybe some of the interaction, like the beautiful blur and like things coming apart, but we try to just get a little moment of like bounce. And I think since then, I think people have really started to open up to design and see the value of it. I think just the fact that we were kind of affirmed by Apple definitely helped because it kind of felt like a validation of like, hey, like design is actually doing something for us. And so since then, like I said, iOS 7 was like that North Star. It was like a standard. And people have actually tried to emulate our war room, we call it, like the locking yourself in a room with people and doing that. And I don't actually recommend it, but they've tried to emulate that, and I can't help but think that that's because people want to produce the same kind of results that we got from iOS 7. And so, yes, I think they see the value in, and I think you either have to push and convince them, or afterwards show them, and showing them is probably the most powerful way.
Anyone else have a question?
Yeah, I was just curious, when you sat down for that initial meeting and you were looking for like the how green is the light kind of question, I was just curious, like, were they literally just like, just freaking run, like just go? Is that like what kind of changed your mind?
Yeah, you know, I think To be fair, there's more to the story. Like I had mentioned, kind of we were reading kind of Food Spotting, and it was acquired in February of 2013, and I joined in May. And Food Spotting, which is like kind of like a Yelp, but you actually search by dishes, and it's user-generated photos. The founder of it is a designer founder, and she, through the acquisition, was coming in, and it kind of felt like there was like something, like the ball was moving, and we had hired this awesome design director from IDEO, and it felt like it was like actually promising. And of course I asked that during the interview, and like I had said, I actually insulted them kind of quite a bit, being like, this is a part domains page, you know, like we need to fix that. And it was kind of the reaction of not like, oh my God, you're so offensive. It wasn't that, it was more like, yeah, we need to change it. That it kind of made me feel like, okay, you know. And I felt like I really didn't have that much to lose, actually, because like you go to a design-centric company, you're one of many, you kind of are reskinning things, but you don't have that, like I said, that transformational heavy lifting. And I kind of was like, worst case scenario, nothing changes, I leave and I go join that beautiful design company. So yeah, I didn't feel like I had that much to lose.
How has your like print background and I guess design foundation outside of web helped you now in product and UX? Or not helped?
I mean, I think that there's a lot of fundamental things about design that carry over. Like when I first got into print design, I was like a super like nerd, chess club, like journalism, everything in high school and middle school. Only girl in the chess club, and what started me in design was I had an internship with USA Today before I joined full time in high school, and it was like this whoa moment where I was like, people actually design the newspaper. Like it doesn't just like land on my doorstep, like in the way it is, and. You know, I know papers are dying, but believe it or not, there's a lot of thought that goes into type size and hierarchy, photo placement, and how to be sensitive about like a shooting versus like an election versus, you know, different types of stories. And I think it's like that similar level of like intention behind design and thoughtfulness. It's just taken to another level here. And I mean, I think there's trade-offs too, like there's the whole aspect of like, this is all software and digital, and so if we all were wiped off our devices, what would actually be left? And I think I kind of miss that about print, is that you have something physical, like, you know, with Michael and the whole, like, it's magical to hold something in your hand. And I think that's why I've actually been getting into lettering and art stuff, to kind of have a physical thing. But yeah, I think it's all like similar level of intention. I mean, the tools are definitely different. I've had a lot of catching up, and I still have a lot to learn to do, like, be a pro at like everything. Like, you know, Pietro here is really good at Sketch, and I haven't really picked that up, and I haven't really picked up code that I probably should. There's a lot to do, so I do feel like I'm playing catch up.
Great job, by the way, to the whole open team, or open table team. So you mentioned about the whole war room hackathon, basically. That's what it was, right? And you said that, you know, you don't recommend that. I love hackathons, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that do that too, but we do it again. Like, that's basically the question, right? Like, will you actually go, and if you knew what you were gonna, how long you were gonna take, and all the struggles and everything, will you have done it again?
Are you asking if tomorrow I got a call and asked to do it again?
Yes.
Or, okay. Probably not. I mean, to be real, this is like a really small portion of my kind of year, and I mean, I'm a person, and yesterday I asked Michael about burnout, and the reason I ask is I do get burned out too, and I think that I start to lack like judgment. I talk about like designing with intuition, but you can't really, if your intuition is like insane or just crazy, then like, not crazy good, like crazy bad. probably not the best place to be. Like, I don't think I would volunteer myself. I think I would be like, hey, I'm gonna peace out and take a little vacay. Someone else can have the opportunity to do this hackathon and have that impact, because I feel like all the projects I've worked on have very felt like hackathon. Whether or not I was physically locked in a room, it's like this like incredible push and like stuff happening at insane speeds, which is super exciting, but also tiring. So in that way, no, but if you were to actually ask, if I were to rewind back to August and Apple asked and did this, of course I would say yes. I think at the time I was like so excited to just like, you know, go, because like the light was really green at that point. And I think that it was, whether or not it was ideal or all the like negative reviews got on the app after we redesigned, which by the way, we still get them. People are like, oh, this is the worst redesign, bring back the old app. But I think regardless of that, it was, like I said, it served as a statement, and without that, I don't know where we would be.
Hi, Chloe.
Hello.
Great talk, and you beat me with the slides. I had 106, you had 140. That's impressive.
142, actually.
Yeah. No, actually, I have several questions, but let's just keep it to two. First of all, can you talk a little bit about, you asked me about burnout, and it seems like you have something on your heart about that. So can you bring us to that war room and talk a little bit about how did it actually affect you and the team? And
well, it's something I still struggle with. There's no solution. I think I'm actually planning to take maybe some time off. I haven't taken any time off in my past year. So I think it's actually really important. And I've been realizing there's a lot of pitfalls, as exciting, like as I said, the speed is of just charging forward sometimes, is that we don't actually stop to reflect enough about what we've done and accomplished. Like I loved your talk with all your videos, because that really like captured and kind of kept an artifact for you to reflect upon. And my goal is actually to like journal or do a video blog of myself and what I've gone through every day, maybe even weekly, to try to remember where I'm coming from. It was really hard for this talk to go back and like think about how I felt at the time. Like luckily I'm like, people who know me know this, but I take a million photos. And so I had some artifacts, but I couldn't really capture that emotion. I felt like I was like kind of stoic about everything, because I was just like numb, like, you know, energizer mode. And the people that I've talked to that I really respect, great designers, they talk about taking like maybe like a minimum of 3 weeks off between major projects and just resting and not thinking about everything. And I think that really helps you come back refreshed. And I unfortunately haven't had the opportunity to do that as much, but I think it's also about you fighting for that. Like I think for me, I kind of, you know, feel bad. I feel like there's a need, but until you help yourself, you really can't help others. And that's something that I'm still working on.
cool. Okay. Well, you're here on the beach now, and you're done with your talk, so you can
totally
you can relax after this. Last question. So your work is very organic, and your slideshow is an amazing example of that, and really hand lettering and all that awesome stuff. And you know, how did it feel as a designer to work on something that is that organizational, that stringent, that, you know, take your user through a flow and very grid based, and it's kind of like a far cry from your other work. And can you put some words on that?
I think this stuff is actually an outlet for me. Like I really enjoyed making these slides. It was more like freaking out. Like I actually brought my watercolor set and I was like doing this in my hotel room, finishing and changing up things. But outside of those like time pressure things, it's really an outlet, because I think during my work it is really dry, especially with Guest Center, like I talk about. It's like a power horse enterprise software that doesn't look enterprisey kind of thing. And so yeah, I feel like this is my mental break, and I really enjoy it. And the thing is, like, I know people talk about design and being pretty. Sorry, this is like a lot of feedback about it being pretty, but we're not. I don't know. I feel like designers really aren't actually artists. Like, there's a very big difference between design and art, or at least product designers and artists. And design, you know, you're solving a problem. With art, there's no wrong or right answer. It's just you, and no one can say anything about it. And so I really enjoy the kind of black and white differences between them.
Yeah, art is design that you can't critique. So yeah, cool, awesome, thanks.
Any more questions?
Is that it? All right, cool. Well, thanks, Chloe.